As palliative care nurses, we care for people with life-limiting conditions. We have been asked about voluntary assisted dying by our patients, and we have been there with them every step of the way. But voluntary assisted dying isn't about us. It's about our patients, and these are their stories.
Sad about that one day it's going to happen, but relieved at the same time that VAD is now an option that that we can have as part of our tools towards the end.
I think that's a big word too, that just because you're exploring VAD doesn't mean you've made a choice, right?
Yeah.
Get everything done, thank you very much, see you later, is having the option. And to us, I think I can speak for both of us, it's a fair peace of mind. So the option there is on the table now for us.
Yep.
If the time comes, could I do it? I don't know.
If you'd like to just tell me about Ted, the person, the husband, the father.
Just a person that was always honest, has always made his own decisions and stuck by them.
I think he was fun-loving, he loved food, he loved wine, he loved company, he liked having jokes with people and entertaining people.
And apart from that, he was my dad. Number one at that, and a great dad, just a great person, great time, great fun to be with, and enjoyed life.
Kathy, tell me a little bit about your Ron.
My Ron.
As a person.
We moved to Australia in 1976, and he came over here as a teacher. Ultimately ended up teaching woodwork, and that probably was his passion. And it coincided with his passion with working with young people and high school. He was a wonderful man and supported me in all of my weird passions and hobbies and activities. And we were a couple.
In 2015, a parliamentary committee was established to discuss issues around palliative care, advanced care planning, and voluntary assisted dying. There was much community engagement, and people said they wanted genuine choices at the end of their lives, about their care, about their end-of-life treatment, and about how and where they wanted to die. Some people said they wanted to decide about the timing and the manner of their death. The committee recommended that voluntary assisted dying should be made law. In 2017, legislation was passed to allow voluntary assisted dying in Victoria, and the law was applied from June 2019.
Yeah, so we've had time to think about it, and I think talking to people about it, I would say that as a society we view death as a taboo subject. We're surrounded by death all the time. As part of our life cycle, you shouldn't be afraid of dying.
Yeah.
You should. It's come to us all at some point in time. Some too soon. Some may live too long. I don't know. But it's not something to shy away from. And I don't say embrace, but accept the fact that it's okay to talk about it.
Voluntary assisted dying means that a person in the late stages of their disease can choose to take a medication to end their life. The medication is prescribed by a certified doctor, and only people who meet specific conditions can apply to have this medication. A person's decision to access voluntary assisted dying must be their own, and it must be consistent, which means they must ask for it on 3 separate occasions, in their own words, and without coercion. The person must have an understanding of their disease, their treatment options, and palliative care. The person accessing voluntary assisted dying must have advanced disease that will likely cause their death within 6 months. However, if the person has a neurodegenerative disease, this can be lengthened to 12 months. The law states that the person must be suffering, and that this suffering is unacceptable to them. The person must have the ability to make and communicate a decision about voluntary assisted dying throughout the entire process. They also have to be over the age of 18 and have been living in Victoria for over 12 months as an Australian citizen or permanent resident.
There were times when I wasn't sure where he was. He certainly wasn't here, except for physically. But I think that's also all the process of making an end-of-life decision and knowing that that it's a permanent decision.
There are several steps a person needs to take to access voluntary assisted dying. The first step is to ask for information about voluntary assisted dying very specifically. Healthcare providers are only allowed to talk about voluntary assisted dying if the person has brought it up with them first or asked for information. However, a person does not specifically have to ask for voluntary assisted dying. They may use words like legally dying or euthanasia. The person needs to complete a written request for voluntary assisted dying. And after assessments by both doctors, must 10 days later see the initial doctor to formalise the process. After this, the doctor will apply for a permit to prescribe the voluntary assisted dying medication, which can be administered by the doctor or self-administered.
So I'm ringing up this number to say, "Hi, I want to die." What's involved in the process of doing this? But when you make the phone call, the lady was really good. She was quite calm, factual about it all, outlined the whole process, has walked me through the process from there. And she's made all the appointments.
Yep.
So it's not that here on your own, go figure it out. There's someone walking you through it, which makes it easier.
Did you find them non-confrontation though, that they were quite calm and supportive?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, both the GP who was new to us and this neurologist, it was never impersonal.
Okay.
It was like seeing your own GP and your own neurologist. They were very personable. They knew what they're talking about was fairly delicate, but by the same token, there was no sugarcoating stuff either. I mean, Chris asked a question of the neurologist, "Oh, do you help with the administration of the drug?" He said, "I don't do that." Quite flat, quite firm, and okay, that's fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big choice to make.
Yeah.
And a big choice for Tris to make too.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you give them a call, they send 2 pharmacists up to your house, and you get another hour session. They go through an education session, and if you would like, they can leave the medication with you. It's in a little lockbox, and you can hang on to that. It belongs to you then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was it surprising to anybody when the subject of voluntary assisted dying was
Oh no,
brought up?
absolutely not. It was something he'd believed in for many years. He'd had a sister and a friend who'd had cancer, and he said, hopefully one day we can choose euthanasia.
Yeah. So who did he first mention it to? Can you remember?
I can't actually remember, exactly what did bring it up. But it was over that phone, and I said to him, well then we need to escalate if that's the choice that you want to make.
Yeah.
He needed to speak to Mum about it, so we discussed different options. It had to actually come from Dad himself.
Yeah.
And then I think that day, then he ended up, as soon as you came in, he sort of told you, didn't he, Mum?
Yes. And I said, whatever you want, whatever's best for you.
Yeah, and that's probably one thing I suppose Dad had taught us, because he made the decision that's what he wanted, and we all supported that.
Yeah.
And that's it gave him the control back. Like Lisa, like as Michelle just said, he's always said to you, hasn't he? He never wants to end up.
Yeah.
What's the word? Like
Dependent,
unable to do things, unable to enjoy himself.
I think it was good because at least, even the way Mum and Dad were watching TV and things like that, at least they knew. There were so many people that didn't even know that voluntary assisted dying was even allowed in Victoria, after Dad had been through the process, the amount of people that were unaware of it. So it was sort of good that they actually followed the bills, even in the beginning, for Dad to understand it. But then it was also learning the process of what needed to you know, go from that once we made that decision or once Dad had made that decision. Yeah.
And I think one of you mentioned just about not knowing about the process.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, when the pharmacist came to the house, do you feel that they explained everything to make it?
As
Yeah,
we
they
said,
were amazing,
as I
yeah.
said before, from start to finish, and that includes the pharmacist, they were amazing.
Everyone was fabulous.
Amazing.
It was like a whole new world.
Yeah.
So even if you know, talk about general hospitals or, you know, general GPs and nothing against anybody, but it's, and palliative again with that too, you know, there's a different compassion involved between your basic wards to your palliative wards. You know, like where even with this process, again, it was another step up.
Yeah.
So you had the support of palliative plus the VAD.
And
everyone that was around that were just so compassionate.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, there's obviously a legal process they need to go through, and a pharmaceutical process they've got to go through and explaining everything. But the way they delivered it, was with compassion and empathy.
Absolutely.
I was going to say they did everything they were supposed to do, but more.
Yeah. And I think you know, I said at the funeral, it was a beautiful death, which is a strange way to describe something, but you know, his family was by his side. Everyone had said their farewells.
He was not alone.
He wasn't alone.
Oh,
we were all there with him.
From that.
It was peaceful. It was pain-free.
He had Mum there. He knew Mum wasn't alone, which I think was a big thing.
And the fact that he knew when it was going to be gave him that opportunity, and the grandchildren to sit with him.
Yeah.
Oh, the weekend prior.
Weekend prior.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a privilege.
To describe.
Yes.
We did it as a family, mixing the medication.
Yeah.
It was we've got, luckily, as Lisa said, she felt like a creep, but she photographed the whole thing the whole way through, which is
It's good.
Just, we're glad you did it.
Yeah.
That was the day before all the children were
All
around.
the grandchildren were here and we all had a port, even the ones that don't drink port. That's my favourite.
yeah,
That's
yes.
definitely my favourite. Turn it around.
So you've got,
Yeah.
but even on the TV, A Perfect Planet.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what they were like. We remember sort of saying even to you, Mum, wasn't it, that, have you said everything?
Yeah.
She's like, we don't need to say anything.
We'd set him up on the pillows, had his port, had the medication, and as I said before, I tried to take it off him to help him so he could drink the other one. He wouldn't release it, and that was Dad. He loved his drink and he got to enjoy it to the very end.
Especially a vintage port. You weren't taking that.
Apart from the fact that he's a very private person and the more people involved with his care, the less he liked it, he also felt that anybody involved with his medical care may have or could take advantage of his decision-making process, and that was such a high priority in his life. Even when we were younger, in fact, not long after we met, I knew where he stood on his attitude towards life and death and end of life, and it was never ever, a gray area as far as he was concerned, and he did not like the thought of anybody impacting or imposing on his decision.
So he'd already made a decision at that point that he wanted to do the voluntary assisted dying, hadn't he?
By the time that you became involved, absolutely.
Yep.
He was determined that he would have total control, even if he wasn't able to take advantage of voluntary assisted dying.
So he was fearful that if he had a palliative care team involved with his care, that we might take that away from him, that decision making away from him,
and the opportunity.
Yeah.
He had a couple of great fears. The first one was that, and the second great fear was that he would be so unwell he would have to go to hospital. And it became even worse because we were right at the beginning of COVID impact, and so it was ever present in his mind. He went to his doctor and said, "This is what I want to do, and I want to pursue this right now. I don't want to think about it. I've thought about it. I'm done thinking about it. I've made my decision, and this is how I want to proceed."
And was that a doctor that was already in the system, if you like, that was able to do, be one of the doctors that could do the voluntary assisted dying, or he hadn't actually done the training at that point?
He had not done the training. I owe him lot. But I also think that Ron made his choice because he was our doctor for a long time, and I think he was able to read the situation. And so the doctor said, okay, this is what you want to do. I don't know anybody around this area that can be involved for you, so I will see what it takes to get registered, and I will pursue this. Oh my gosh, he did. You know, he did everything he needed to do. He took the course, he sat the exam, he became registered in a very, very short time frame, and pursued the process and educated himself about the process so that he could help us. And he's just a phenomenal man.
Yeah. So at this point, we then got a hospital bed in the house.
Yes.
Which, for some reason, he had facing the opposite direction to where I thought he would have put it. He's got this beautiful view, and he had his back to it. But he had the tally in front of him.
Yeah, I think, so really, the hospital bed was mainly used for night. Yeah. He still mobilized himself in our house. He was very introspective. So they had a process. So the medication that Ron would be taking was left in the car, but they came in with a kit. And they sat down and discussed with us the process of step by step. It was a really well done process. Any questions that we had, they were open to answering. They made it, for me, very comfortable being involved as a partner of somebody who had made this decision, but it was all to him. It was all, Ron, this is what Ron. And I thought that was really important. Some people, when you have a partner and you think the person's unwell, the partner is spoken to, this is, Ron will do this, or Ron, we can do this, but they're talking to the partner. They never did that. Good for them. Well-trained, kind, whatever the case may be. They were all about Ron, and I thought that was fantastic. It sat well with him. Yes. He had accomplished the last bit of his life. He was in full control, which was so important to him. And it did not take away his dignity, which I am ever so pleased.
Mm. Yeah.
It took a lot of internal strength for me to help him by mixing this solution. But once it was done, then everything went along fine. It was very interesting. Pharmacists had said that it had a very bitter taste. And to be prepared for that, and you could drink anything afterwards. So I had a glass of, Ron was a Diet Coke fan, and so I had a glass of Diet Coke there for him, and also some water, excuse me. So when he finished swallowing the medication, he took a couple swallows of water, but I don't know that he ever even really got it swallowed. It was so quick reacting. I can't evaluate this except to say whether it was his pain medication load that helped that, whether it was the fact that he was done and it was done, whether he was receptive to it particularly, it doesn't matter. He went to sleep. Within about 3 minutes, he was sound asleep. And I think you said it was about 8 minutes or so he had passed away. I didn't even notice. I was so busy talking to you and holding his hand and expecting it to be, what they say, up to 2 hours for some people. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a vigil, just deal with it. I just prepared myself for that. And then you said, Kathy, I think he's passed. And I thought, wow, I missed it.
You didn't miss it, you were right there.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's just showing how peaceful it really was.
Oh.
Amazingly peaceful.
Oh, gosh. I hope, if people try to comprehend how easy that is for a person just to slip away, it was. I've seen people, I'm a nurse. I've seen people die. I've seen hard deaths. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But I saw my husband just slip away.
Yep.
And it was perfect.
It was perfect.
It was what he wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've already spoken to you about this, but when he did ask me, and I was absolutely totally honoured, but it was the first time I had been involved with anyone that had done this process. And I can remember driving away from here in floods of tears, thinking,
me too.
what have I done? What am I doing? Because I hadn't really thought about it at all. But when Ron asked me, my immediate reaction was absolutely yes. But I was so privileged to do it. And yeah, and it was just the most peaceful death that I have ever seen in my whole career.
I do what I do because I love helping people. I love talking to people, and I love caring for people when they're so vulnerable in the end of their life. Quite simply, I think that palliative care involvement allows for the best possible death. I think there is such a thing as a bad death and a good death, and palliative care allows for people to have a good death.
And BAD gives you that opportunity to take that in a controlled environment, with some dignity, say goodbye to your loved ones, throw a party, whatever you're going to do, and make it something that's not a, oh my God, what's happened, but more, thank God that's happened. Look, I love living, and I want to live, but I don't want to just be alive. Get to the point where I'm just alive and not living, then okay.
That there isn't a need to have either BAD or other services. So you can have both. So you can have supportive care,
absolutely,
palliative care,
absolutely,
any of those things.
Absolutely.
So what is your take-home message for other families that are thinking about voluntary assisted dying or thinking about options for their end-of-life care? What's your take-home message for them?
Don't be afraid. I think BAD, if you go to your doctors and your specialists, you talk about different treatments. You talk about are there trials you get involved in. You discuss things that are around your condition. To me, BAD is another thing to discuss. It's just an option that is, it's okay to talk about it. It's just a phone call. And you might find once you've made that call, it's not what you want to do. Or it might be, oh, thank God, it's not that hard. And there's someone to help me down that path.
Illness, serious illness, takes a lot from a person. It takes away their independence. It takes away their, in his case, his mobility. It took away his enjoyment of life. It took away so much from him that for this voluntary assisted dying legislation to give just a small bit back to him was an amazing thing, is an amazing thing. And I guess if I were to say to somebody, you know, who was thinking about what they wanted to do in this case, or in a similar situation, I would say, don't be afraid of it. It's always going to be you, the person who's making the decision, to make the decision. But don't be afraid to investigate, because you actually might find that it's right for you.